Welcome to this week's Short Clip Friday podcast. Each Friday, I'll be posting 10 to 15 minute segments from previous podcasts. And the point here is just to bring you some of the highest yield topics from each podcast in order to kind of reinforce those topics. This clip is from the Psychosocial Development and Identity podcast and covers Erikson's 8 stages of psychosocial development. Enjoy. All right, the first thing I want to go over here is my man Erikson's 8 stages of psychosocial development. And so his theory was based a little bit upon Freud's theory, which I'll go over next. And it basically says that at different points in a person's life, they come to these crises and they must resolve conflicting ideas at these crises in order to move on and become a productive member of society. And if this person is to get stuck at a stage and not be able to move on, not be able to answer this crisis or resolve this crisis, then they get stuck at a stage. And this results in a feeling of inadequacy, and these people may not become a productive member of society if they get stuck at these stages. And honestly, I think this was probably the number one hardest thing for me to memorize on the MCAT for whatever reason. So I'll give you a little mnemonic at the end that helped me a bit. Just know you'll have to know the ages here and also the crises that are going on at these ages. All right, so the very first crisis that a child comes upon, and this is between the ages of 0 and 18 months, is a crisis that's called trust versus mistrust. And essentially what's going on is the baby must learn to trust adults. And for instance, if a baby is neglected, maybe not fed on time, left alone to its own devices, then the baby will learn to mistrust. And so if this conflict of trust versus mistrust is not resolved, then this baby may have problems with anxiety, fear, separation, etc. down the line when they become older. The second stage occurs at 18 months to 3 years of age, and that is autonomy versus shame and doubt. At this stage, young children begin to develop a sense of independence. And if they are able to pass this stage and resolve this conflict, then they are confident in their ability to survive and move about the world. But if not, then they begin to develop a sense of low self-esteem and they start to doubt the world. Again, and this occurs between the ages of 18 months and 3 years. And then between the ages of 3 and 5 years old, they go through this conflict known as initiative versus guilt. So at this point, children start to assert themselves, they start to gain some confidence, and they begin to plan activities, make up games, and initiate activities with other children. And if given this opportunity to develop these relationships and play these games, children develop a sense of initiative and feel that they are secure in their ability to lead others and make decisions. And if they are not able to resolve this conflict, then they may start to feel guilty, right? They may start to say, oh, I'm a burden. People don't want to play with me. Anytime I go play, it's because people feel bad for me, etc. The next stage in development is industry versus inferiority, and this occurs between the ages of 5 and 13. And in the context of development, industry just refers to competence. And in this stage, the child wants approval for demonstrating specific competencies. You know, they might start being good at math and good at video games, good at sports, whatever it is, they start to develop this competence at some task. And they are able to show that they can do things that are valued in society. And if they're unable to feel they are giving to society and they cannot resolve this conflict, then what happens is they develop a sense of inferiority. And teachers actually have a lot to do with pushing students through this crisis. So if teachers are very accepting and teachers are very encouraging and they say, hey, you're doing great at this, you're adding super well, or you know how to do fractions great, then this encourages students and helps them get a sense of industry or competence. The next stage in Erikson's theory of psychosocial development is identity versus role confusion, and this occurs between the ages of 13 and 21. And this is when adolescents start to try to figure out their role in life. How are they going to fit into society? What are they going to do for their lives? How are they going to contribute to society? And this can lead, obviously, to very dark places and underscores the importance of people feeling like they are contributing to society in some way, right? Because if they feel they contribute to society and they have some identity in life, then that's great. They get past this stage and go on to live a healthy life. But if they can't figure out what they want to do, where they fit in society, they can have problems down the road, whether that's with mental health or other things that people struggle with in life. So at this stage in life, identity versus role confusion, they're just trying to figure out what their role is in life. The next stage is intimacy versus isolation, and this occurs between the ages of 21 and 39. And this centers around forming long-lasting intimate relationships. And I'm not just talking about marriage.
Marriage is what brings us together today.
I'm talking about long-term healthy relationships, friendships, these friendships that you're going to have the rest of your life. Successful completion of this stage or this conflict results in healthy relationships. However, failure to resolve this stage or resolve this conflict results in social isolation or owning too many cats. I'm kind of guessing here, but the next stage then is generativity versus stagnation. And this occurs between the ages of 40 and 65. And in this context, generativity is a concern for establishing and guiding the next generation, which is essentially the same thing as leaving a legacy. So at this stage, people begin to realize that at some point they're going to die, and they want to be able to leave behind something or some change or some betterment of society. And failure to resolve this stage results in a feeling of unproductiveness or a disconnection from society. People might start to think, okay, why am I continuing to work really hard at my job or whatever if it's just going to go away when I die? And obviously then successful completion of the stage has people saying, okay, great, I have built something that is going to carry over to the next generation. And the eighth and final stage of Erikson's psychosocial development theory is ego integrity versus despair. And so what I want you to do here is just imagine yourself sitting in a rocker on your front porch. You're 67 years old. You're sipping some whiskey. Maybe you've got a cigar in your mouth and you're just chilling. You're watching the sunset. And you just retired from an illustrious career as a well-known urologist. And you sit here and you're just thinking, man, I've had a great life. I invented the wireless catheter and now I've made millions of dollars and I've made millions of lives better. It could be then said that you have had success at this stage, right? You've had a successful life and you're able to reflect on that life and say that you've been successful, you've helped people, etc., and you feel happy. However, if you're not successful at this stage, you reflect back on your life and you think, man, what did I do with my life? And you get a sense of despair. So at this stage, people are reflecting back on their lives and either saying, yeah, I've done great, and that's called ego integrity. And then there's other people that are saying, man, I wish I would have done different things, and they're not happy, and that is despair. All right, so those are the 8 stages of Erikson's psychosocial development theory. And what the MCAT is going to do is they are going to ask you to identify which stage of development the people in a study are experiencing. And that may either be in the form of their age or that may be in the form of the stage conflicts that are going on at this age. And here's the mnemonic that I use to kind of try to keep these all in order in my brain. And that is trust autonomy to initiate the industry, identify intimacy, and generate integrity. Again, that's trust autonomy to initiate the industry, identify intimacy, and generate integrity, which is just a bunch of bullshit basically, but it kind of helps you keep straight the order of these different conflict stages. And just for a quick example, one place I've seen on the MCAT is they'll present you some kind of study in a passage you'll read. They'll say something like, okay, we have taken 10-year-olds and we've separated them into 2 groups and then exposed one of these groups to violent videos. Then we will measure their levels of external violence that are expressed after they watch these videos. And then you'll have some kind of question after this passage, which is almost unrelated to the passage, that will say, what stage of development are these children at according to Erikson's theory of psychosocial development? And the answer in this case is industry versus inferiority. And you'll just have to know this based on the age, which of course in this study was 10 years old. So yeah, this just gets at the fact that you need to have these ages memorized and you need to have these stages memorized.